Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Free to Grow CFO podcast, where we dive deep into conversations about scaling a profitable D2C brand. I'm your host, Jon Blair, founder of Free to Grow CFO. We are the go-to outsourced finance and accounting firm for 8- and 9-figure D2C brands. All right, today I'm joined by co-founder of Hulken and beloved Free to Grow CFO client, Alex Schinasi. Alex, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jon, for having me. I'm so excited.
Yeah, well, so today we're going to talk about scaling a bootstrapped brand, which you know very well. I actually follow the content that you put out on a regular basis about your story and your journey, which I think is really cool because I think a lot of one of the things that I really want to make sure we do on this show is expose what it's actually like to scale a brand, not the sensationalist version of, or like sensationalist social media version of what it appears to look like. Right?
Yeah. Media, and especially on platforms like LinkedIn, I feel like it's all about success stories and putting on milestones. And you have every investor on the market kind of eyeing what you're doing. So it's a place to kind of brag a little bit.
Totally.
But it does take a lot of hard work, and it doesn't have to be an overnight success, which is also a misconception that we get, especially in the VC-backed world of CPG brands.
Totally agree. And you're not a first-time founder, right? So you have been there before, so to speak, in terms of like growing and exiting a brand. So before we get into talking about the Hulken story, can you give the audience just a brief background about who you are and where you came from?
Yeah, of course. So I've always been in software, in B2B SaaS for about 15 years. I was the founder of 2 software startups. The first one was B2B backend tool for the home remodeling space that I sold to another unicorn called House, based in Palo Alto in 2018, which was an amazing journey. We stayed at House for about 3 years, left their B2B offering at the company. And following that, I had another software startup called Clay that was in the early education space. And that one I ran for about 3 years before exiting last year to another software startup called Kangaroo Time. So I've always been a software gal, saw all what it's like to run a VC-backed business, to have your eyes on growth at all costs and do that whole spiel. And in parallel, I was starting a side gig with my husband, Johnny, who you know, that started taking off in 2020 very slowly, was very much a nights and weekend thing for me for fun. And when I sold my last business last year, I decided to go full in because the success was what it was. And I thought it was a great opportunity to try something new.
I love it. Side note, Johnny and I we have something in common. We both were touring musicians. He was much more successful than I was in a more popular genre than the thrash metal band that I was playing in. I want to get into that in a second, but before we do, you coming from, there's actually quite a few brands that Free to Grow CFO works with where it's headed up by a founder or co-founder who isn't a first-time business founder, but is first-time in e-com, right? And so
Yeah, because I see the opposite quite a bit, right? There's a lot of e-com founders that then are like, screw that, I'm done with the consumer space, I'm done with hard products, I'm going into software. Like the scale's easier, there's no inventory to manage. So I see a lot of these stories. So it's interesting that you see the reverse, because it feels kind of lonely to be that software gal in e-com.
So what's been, and you going from software to e-com consumer goods, what would you say is similar and what is different?
So yeah, it's interesting. So a lot of my day-to-day is similar to what I've always been doing: growing, scaling, digital marketing, conversion optimization, funnels. I mean, it's a lot of the same lingo. All of my previous businesses I've scaled through Meta as well. So it's kind of my bread and butter and what I'm very familiar with. So it's still within my comfort zone when it comes to growth and marketing. What's very different is obviously the entire ops side of things, the production cycle. Then, the iteration process is much more complicated. It's very hard for me as a software founder to think, okay, if I want to launch a new product, I actually need to test. I don't have a way to really iterate and test it before, cycles and cycles of production. So things like that are a little bit frustrating. What is actually very refreshing is kind of the very simple and business model in many ways. We know exactly our costs, we know exactly our margins, we know exactly what we need to make money. We're profitable from day one. We don't have to reach for scale as much as we have to reach for profitability. So that's one aspect of it that I love. And the fact that it's very tangible and we see this love from the community on social media, it's just unlike anything I've experienced before. Like having a consumer product that people adore so much and
Yeah.
share about so much to that extent is just unbelievable, just so much fun.
Yeah, they can take photos of it and videotape themselves using it, right? And post like their
Yeah,
user
and it's
experiences.
prime for that, right? The Hulken is, if you don't know, the Hulken is this shiny, bright, rolling tote bag on wheels. So it's really prone to be shot on social media. It's a product that
Totally.
people just find really fun. It's a little bit absurd almost and funny. And so for that, I think we're lucky because it means you can't ignore it. If someone walks with a Hulken down the streets of New York City, you're gonna notice it. And I
I
think
was just
that's
gonna say that. As you know, my business partner Jeff, he recently moved to the suburbs of New York, but he's been in
yeah,
New York City for a number of years. And I go out there a few times a year. And when you see a Hulken going down the street, everyone's like, "What is that thing?" And I mean that's huge for awareness and market because
yeah,
it's something that people are like they're asking like, "What is that?" Oh, it's a Hulken, right? And
yeah.
that's huge because not every physical product
Right.
begs
I
that
think
kind of like response.
exactly. Not only that, but I think of, underwear brands or brands that you don't see, perfumes, lotion, things that you wouldn't see on someone necessarily that wouldn't have the same virality. What you said is exactly right. It's a big, shiny bag that you see rolling down the streets of New York City. It will turn heads. It will be creating questions. People will stop you on the streets to ask you what it is. And we invented an entirely new category of products. I mean, there were no rolling tote bags. And it's interesting when it comes to CPG specifically, because when we talk to retailers, they don't know where to put us. Are we
For
fashion?
sure.
Are we travel? Are we storage? We're kind of a mix of all these things because it is a product that was never there before.
Okay, so I'm curious. You have a VC backed startup background or experience with your SaaS startups. Why bootstrapped for Hulken?
I think we got lucky because of my family's background in packaging that we have the manufacturing piece figured out and funded from day one. So we are bootstrapped, but we also didn't need to raise any capital for our first batch of production. So I think that's really important to note.
For
But I
sure.
think what this highlights is that there are many ways to fund a business, right? We've seen other CPG brands partner with the manufacturers as a funding vehicle. And I think that's a great way to go about it. What I like about not having a VC right now is that we don't have the pressure of reaching certain targets within certain timeframes. I like that it's making us think a little bit more creatively when it comes to marketing, hiring. I mean, every step of the business, we just have to really think hard before spending any dollar. We have to think more creatively about creating content, about doing anything because we don't have the luxury of endless capital to do these things. So I like that it's a little bit uncomfortable. It's actually a sweet spot that I personally love as a founder because I like the early stage hustle. I don't want to get to the point where, we make so much money that we're not even thinking about how to crack that nut. So there's a lot of benefits of having a VC backed business. One of which is investors. If you find the right investors, they're incredible. And we had amazing VCs in the past and great relationships with each of them. I'm just really enjoying this right now. I'm enjoying the freedom. I'm enjoying being profit first in my mindset. And not to say we will never raise capital, because I think there might be a time and place at a certain stage in the business. It's just not where we're at right now.
Okay. There's several things that I want to dive into from that. The first one is I actually personally understand how freeing it can be to go from venture backed to bootstrapped. That's my story. At Guardian Bikes, we were venture backed the entire way. And I think by necessity, based on what we were trying to do, we now have a factory in Indiana. We had to build a factory. We have our own warehouses.
Wow.
It's a huge undertaking. Definitely needed
Yeah.
outside capital, right?
Yeah.
But starting Free to Grow CFO, when I started this, I was like, we're going to be bootstrapped the whole way through as we scale. And there's actually, oddly enough, there's a lot of firms in our space that are taking
Yeah.
VC investment right now
Wow. Interesting.
for various reasons. A lot of it is tech enablement, But what we found, or what I found about 6 months in, was like, we also want to focus on working with bootstrapped brands
Mm,
because when we ourselves are a firm that has that same ethos and we're
yeah.
working with brands who have the bootstrap mindset, it's the constraints that get placed on your thinking that drive. It's just different conversations. You've been in the boardroom or at the leadership table with a VC backed brand. And it's always like, what's the story? How do we get to the next milestone? Like, how do we get to the next raise at the higher valuation? And I'm not saying that's a good or a bad thing. I'm just saying now it's like, hey, what's the payback we're gonna get on investing
Yeah.
these dollars in hiring this person or in buying this inventory or launching this product or scaling this ad campaign. So I'm curious, being that you guys came out at Bootstrapped from kind of day one, what was the first major growth marketing channel or channels that worked for you
Yeah.
guys?
So it's interesting what you said about the boardroom because I myself have to still detach myself from that mindset a little bit. I still have this 100 million milestone in my head from the VC back
For
grooming that
sure.
I've had all these years. Like I still want to get to that milestone as fast as possible. And it's just an interesting observation I did by myself. But in terms of growth channels, Hulken was kind of an accidental business, meaning I was not, I was doing the marketing for it on my weekends. And so initially it was very organic, very much users sharing it on social media. We launched early 2020. And when COVID happened, one of our buyers, very early buyers, and we did very little meta advertising at the time, maybe $1,000 or $2,000 a month. And she actually was a writer for The Strategist, and which was a huge milestone for any CPG brand to be mentioned on The Strategist. So a couple of months in, we get this dedicated feature on The Strategist, naming us as an alternative for these journey carts at the supermarket. So that was kind of like one big first viral moment for the brand when we saw that first spike on Shopify. And from there, we just really capitalized, doubled down on UGC, any type of user generated content, micro influencers. We realized that the product was getting a lot of attention from different niches, very specific niches on Instagram, like thrifters, interior designers, chefs, photographers, professional organizers. We came across so many crazy communities like professional mermaids. Apparently there's a whole mermaid community that, needs to transport wigs and tails and whatnot. So doubling down on these niches and doing collabs with these micro influencers, I'm saying, 5 to 10K followers, but highly engaged following was super instrumental to us because we became a must have for their business. And as such, they were excited to share about it. And, I would say 18 to 24 months into launching Hulken, that's when we started investing a little bit more in Meta. And that's when we started seeing that true hockey stick growth. But it started with a lot of focus on the product, making the product incredible, and a lot of focus on these Instagram niches that were really powerful.
Yeah, okay. So here's what's interesting. Now me having the benefit of, you know, grown Guardian bikes and then, having run free to Grow CFO for 4 years, we've worked with, 65, 70 brands. And what I'm starting to realize is that there's like this catch 22 with starting an ecom brand, right? On the kind of positive side of things, it's really easy to bring a product to market, right? And like, get a Shopify store set up or even an Amazon store. You can go source product from kind of wherever for the most part to get started. But the flip side of that and why it's catch 22 is that means that there's a low barrier to entry. There can be a lot of competition. And so what you tend to find is the ecom sales channels getting flooded with brands where product wasn't such a priority on the front end. It wasn't seen necessarily as the driver of everything. It was like, hey, let me just find something that I think people need and let me go start spending dollars on Meta. And I've seen lots of brands get started and even get to a decent scale and profitability, but because they didn't really focus on nailing product on the front end and really building something defensible, the brand eventually dies or really starts struggling out of nowhere. What are
Yeah.
some of the things that, like, on the product side, on the front end, you guys did to just really make sure you build a really great product that can give you some defensibility over time?
Yeah, so it's really interesting you say that because when people ask me for the first 2 to 3 years, only team was a product development team. It was, the
Mm-hmm.
factory, like testing the product, making the wheels less noisy, making the strap a little bit longer, making the experience of using a Hulken really optimal. And especially as we were getting popular with these professional niches, we realized, okay, it can't just be a grocery bag, right? It needs to be something super sturdy. It needs to handle the streets of New York City as much as it can handle other types of streets. And so we really were hyper focused on making an incredible product for the first 2 to 3 years. And by the way, we're continually expanding that too. We're continuously making it better as we speak. But it very much is at the center of everything we do is the bag, how it rolls, how is the experience, how is its durability. And I think that served us because we listened to customer feedback so intensively for the first few years that we became an essential for so many people. And
Totally.
then came the marketing, and then came the virality and the flywheel that came with that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I want to make sure that the audience like hears that the sequencing, because I have seen this time and time again. Nailing the product is almost kind of like the tail that wags the dog. Now let me be clear. It doesn't mean you don't have to be a good operator. When you take a really great product, right, and you marry it up with great operators, right, in all the major functions of the business, that builds a great business. But you can't just have great operators with a mediocre product, right? That doesn't, I haven't seen that withstand the test of time for any brand
No,
who has done it
exactly.
that way. The other thing is being obsessed about your product continuously, right? Like people will see Guardian Bikes today, 9-figure brand, factory, incredible product. We started that business in 2009 in business school,
Yeah,
right? I mean,
crazy.
that's 16 years ago. And the original founder and CEO, Brian Riley, who's still with the business, he is so obsessed with the product,
Yeah,
right? And
how
has
amazing.
been for 16 years
Yeah,
and will never stop trying to make it better. And that is just
yeah,
so key, you know?
that is so true. And you know Johnny a little bit, but that's exactly his whole point. Because we're always, I think like a VC founder sometimes. I'm like, okay, let's make this one more expensive. We're adding these bells and whistles. He's like, no, the core Hulken, the Hulken that everybody loves, needs to continuously improve and be better. So it's not like we're launching new SKUs, trying to make more money. We're trying to improve the existing hero product, but because it is the one that everyone loves and raves about. So it's very much key to our ethos. It's key to our success, and it's key to creating that flywheel of virality because it creates the best experience our users can have.
Okay, so being bootstrapped, what are some of the things that come to mind with like how you guys make decisions on what to invest in when you have scarce capital dollars? There's product, there's team hires, there's marketing. Like, how do you guys go about making those decisions?
I think we're the perfect example here. We kind of wait until we're barely, head above water to make decisions. Like we're in this position now where really under so much pressure on the ops side that we're finally hiring a head of ops. So I think it takes growth until we realize we really just don't have the bandwidth anymore to then decide what we invest in. We're also realizing that we're starting to see a lot of copycats and dupes out there. So the power of our brand is super important more than ever. So in addition to obviously investing in the product development, which we do naturally, and that's I think will always be the case, but we're also investing in brand marketing more so than we have in the past. Kind of make sure Hulken becomes this legacy name that it needs to be in order to stand above the noise.
I mean, the name itself is a great name. Who came up with it?
My dad. So my dad invented the product. I don't know if you know the
Okay.
story, but he designed the product for his own use case. He was, shopping in Paris and wanted to have an easy way to roll his stuff home. And through that, he just came up with a very strong name. My mom is from Sweden, and so Hulken means the Hulk in Swedish.
So good.
And it's easy to say, easy to spell, and pretty memorable.
Okay, so you mentioned your head of ops, but have there been any other key kind of team members, insourced or outsourced, that you guys have added along the way that have been instrumental to like helping you guys continue to scale?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Free to Grow has been great addition to the team. We work with a ton of freelance teams, and we really believe in scaling with outsourced teams. Actually, we're just a team of 5 internally currently, and the rest
Amazing.
is all external. And we love it because we have the best of the best. Like at Free to Grow, you're experts in what you do, and having experts in finance, there are also experts in e-com was instrumental to us and is key to us reaching the next stage of growth because it's not just about growing without understanding the business and understanding the nuances of what it is to run a CPG brand at all levels, including finance.
Yeah, so like let's see, when did we launch Guardian Bikes? I think it was 2015 is when we launched the brand. We were working on our patented brake system for like 6 years before that. But again, product development before scaling, right? But 10 years ago, there were a lot of the D2C like darlings, right? Like the
Yeah.
early mattress companies, Tuft and
Yeah.
Needle and
Yeah.
Casper, where like you could, it's interesting. We hired a bunch of people from Tuft and Needle at Guardian Bikes
Mm,
once they got acquired and kind of the early team started
mm,
leaving. And what we learned that was really interesting is that they were able to scale to 9 figures just on Google because people were already searching for mattresses, but no one was selling
mm.
them, which is
Yeah.
such a different game
Oh,
than
so
creating a brand
different.
new product category where you got to do top of funnel, like get people aware of something that they were definitely not searching for before, right? And so the reason I'm calling that out is because those brands, it was so cheap to scale.
Mm,
It wasn't even about Meta being cheaper, though it was. It was that if you were the first brand or the first couple brands to bring a
yeah.
product to market on ecom and people were already searching for that, you
Yeah.
could just spend
Yeah.
money on Google and soak up that
It's
traffic that was
amazing.
already there.
Yeah.
And so the margins were so high, you had these massive teams. I mean, like Tuft and Needle had like dozens and dozens of people in-house full-time in a huge office in Phoenix
Crazy.
really, really quickly. But the modern ecom brand is not set up like that. I mean, we work with several brands. We work with numerous brands who are doing 20, 30, 50 million a year in revenue. And they have very small in-house teams, but they're
Yeah.
leveraging the right freelancers and like kind of firms or service providers that are needed for the phase of growth that they're in. And
Yeah.
I want to just say that to the audience because most of the brands we work with, that is their makeup. And if they aren't, when they come to us, it's one of the first things we tell them, like, hey, this is not how it's done these days. But I just, it's really important for people to understand that because I think that is going to continue to be the trend that's not going to go away. Do you
Yeah,
agree?
I agree. And I'm also wondering if, because the makeup of your client base is also primarily bootstrap businesses, and I'm wondering if that has to do with it. But also, I am talking to VC-backed businesses, CPG brands that are maybe raise a little bit, not crazy amounts, but raise a little bit to get going. And then we'll have a small internal team and a team of freelancers, essentially agencies, to support them along the way. I mean, as a founder, it's incredible. You don't have to worry about the overhead and everything that comes with HR and all of that pressure, but also just you have access to the best of the best. So you have access to every agency has expert in this and that and brings the kind of knowledge you wouldn't get in a single person as a hire in your team. So yeah, we're a fan. We love the model and we think it definitely helped us scale.
So, brand founders listening to this episode, right? And they're listening to you and your story aspirationally, right? Serial entrepreneur, like you've founded several businesses, exited a couple of them. Now you're scaling a bootstrap brand to, 8 figures and beyond. What would be one thing that you want to leave that listener with from your story that you think would impart some helpful wisdom upon their journey?
So I think definitely hyper focus on the product early on before you think crazy about marketing. A lot of brands will start with branding. I mean, we didn't have a brand book until we were at, 15 plus million in revenue. We just had a simple Shopify site. We only redid it last year when we were approaching 30 million revenue. So I think things like that leave for later, like understand that you have an amazing product, some defensibility, strong very early on. Try to get some organic virality going and then amplify that with some ad dollars is the key to do it.
I love that. The sequencing that you just went through is key. Doing things in the wrong order is what kills a lot of brands. So I always like to finish up with a personal question. And for you, this is a question that's kind of near and dear to my heart because I grew up in a household where mom and dad ran a business together and still do to this day.
You
And
do? Okay.
so,
And it's still
yeah,
married?
they're
That's
still
the
married and they
question.
still run
Okay,
their
good.
business together. I'm trying to get them to retire now. But you run a business with your husband. What's it like?
Listen, it's fun. Like I'm always wondering, is it going to be a problem one day? So far, it's amazing. We do such different parts of the business. I mean, I handle growth and marketing. He's very heavily involved with ops and production. Sometimes we'll sit next to each other the whole day and not really engage with each other and still feels like we each have our own jobs in a way. So far it's been great. Sometimes, of course, when we go on date nights, we talk about work, but we love it so much. I think it'd be different if we are doing something that we hated and
For
then it would
sure.
kind of come into our personal lives, but this is so much fun. We have a brand that people love. We have a brand that's growing like crazy. It's exciting. And so even if we have to talk about it at home, we love it. And our kids love it and they embrace it. They know that we work together and they love the product. They want to be involved already. So it's a lot of fun.
Love it. Well, Alex, thank you so much for coming on, sharing your story, sharing some of your wisdom. The Free to Grow CFO team, we love working with you, and we're really looking forward to helping you guys take the business to the next level. And just thank you for joining. And I can't thank you enough.
Thank you, John.
Don't forget, if you like today's episode, please hit the subscribe button wherever you're listening and leave us a review. It helps us reach more people like you. Also, if you want more tips on scaling a profitable D2C brand, follow me, Jon Blair, on LinkedIn. And if you're interested in learning more about how our CFOs and accountants can help your brand increase profit and cash flow as you scale, check us out at freetogrowcfo.com.